If you're a student in college, you probably have final exams coming up within the next week or two. If you're a student in high school, you might have another 3 to 4 weeks. But this video is to help you prepare and get ready for that very scary week of final exam week. So either you're a first-time student taking finals for the very first time, or you're an experienced veteran, I'm here to just help you organize that chaos of finals week and how you're going to prepare for those finals so you can do the best that you possibly can. So I've organized this into a fake schedule here that I've created, and then I'm going to talk about how am I going to attack these classes into final exam week. So step number one when preparing for finals is know the syllabus. And what I mean by that, and that's something that you probably do in the very first day of class or even before class you get access to the syllabus, is know what exactly goes into that final grade breakdown. What is the percentages of your homework, quizzes, exams, and the final exam? And on top of that, you even want to know what is the policy regarding exams being dropped. Does the final replace a lowest exam? How many quizzes get dropped? Does all of the homework, all those percentages, you want to know every single thing that makes up your final grade, especially the exam drop, or if your final is going to replace your lowest exam. I had a student completely throw away their grade, not understanding how that rule works. They had an A, they didn't understand that they still needed to take the final, and they ended up not getting an A because they just kind of came in and blew off the whole final and didn't do very well, and it cost them an A. They ended up getting a B. So I don't want that to happen to you. So make sure you read through all of the syllabus. Make sure you understand exactly what goes into the grading breakdown. Once you know exactly what goes into that, now we can start figuring out how are we going to prepare for all of these classes in one single week where we're just loaded with exams. So I have a fake schedule here where taking calculus, I have an A right now with a 91%. Taking English, I have an A with 92%. Taking physics, I have a B with a 87%. I'm taking art with an A with a solid 97%. So knowing, like, okay, these are my grades, what I would do and how I've always kind of encouraged my students to prepare for final exam week is the week before, or even if you have the time, the 2 weeks out from final exams, sit down, go through your classes, and make sure you know when each final is being offered, because your schedule is going to be completely different final exam week. You might have your final on a Monday and then not even meet on Wednesday, or no class Monday, final Wednesday, and whatever. So you want to make sure you know when is your final. And you want to do this a couple weeks out if you can. A week before is perfectly fine too. But probably that week before, I would sit down, this Monday or Tuesday, and start to think about final exam week and think about, so I have my English final that following Monday. I have my physics and art final that Tuesday, and then I have my calculus final that Thursday. So I know exactly what to expect final exam week. And then I think about my grades. So if my English final is Monday, I'm getting a 92%. That's not a solid A, that's not a safe A, but that's understanding the syllabus. Is there any sort of policy dropped? Is there any essays that need to be factored into the final grade? So there's something to keep in mind. And then the Tuesday, big day, I have physics and art. Art, I have a 97%. I know exactly what's going to be on the art final. We got a very helpful study guide. I know exactly how to prepare. So just something to keep in mind too. That's another thing you want to make sure you know. Do you have any sort of study guides available? Anything to know about the final? Any sort of inside information that your teacher provided? You want to keep all of that in mind, which I'll talk about more in a minute. So physics and art, definitely a big day. Because physics, I'm getting an 87%. 87% is a B. I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole thought process of what do I need to do to get an A, or what do I need to do to hold on to a B, or just this minimalist type of thinking of I want to do the bare minimum to get by with this grade. I want to do the best. I want to try to get the best possible grade that I can get. So I'm shooting for an A right now in physics, and I have an 87%. But keep in mind that teacher is going to drop a quiz. So that's going to help me out. So that's always something that people forget too, is I have an 84%. There's no way I'm going to get an A. So then they don't prepare for the final enough, and then they end up getting a C or a B on the final. Something gets dropped, and they could have gotten an A in the class, but they didn't because they didn't prepare for the final. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to leave yourself up to this weird, could have done better, but I didn't prepare enough. Another thing is extra credit. That's another huge area where people kind of forget. Like, oh, the best I could do is 100%, and that's not going to bump me to an A, so why am I even going to try? Well, there's extra credits on most finals, or sometimes the teacher messes up, and they're like, you know what, no one got this problem right, so everyone's going to get it right. So +2 for everyone, so things like that. So you always want to keep that in mind. Shoot for the best that you possibly can when preparing for finals. So this is a big day. Tuesday's a big day, physics and art. And then Thursday, I have my calculus final, and I have a 91% in calculus. So that is very borderline. That could go either way. I could drop down to a B pretty easily or maintain an A. So that's something on my radar right now that I'm like, I want to do the best I possibly can in that calculus exam. Here's what a lot of people do going into finals week. Is they look at their schedule like this and they say like, okay, my English finals Monday. I don't necessarily have to do a ton of prep because I have to just write an essay. I know exactly what the topic's going to be, or maybe it's going to be a random 3 topics, whatever, however English professors do their finals. So I don't have to necessarily like study the books for hours and hours and hours. So then they say, okay, so I'm going to spend Saturday and Sunday preparing for physics, which is a good strategy. But here's the mistake that a lot of people make. They're so focused on this Tuesday, like physics and art, like they're probably not focusing on art too much because they have a 90%, but they're so focused on a class like physics right now where you're going to study Saturday, Sunday, Monday for physics, and then take the exam for physics, and then that just leaves you the nighttime on Tuesday and then Wednesday for calculus. There's a lot of issues with that strategy of studying for finals. The first issue that I have with that is what's called the forgetting curve. So this week before finals is a completely normal week. So you're probably going to have calculus on either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. So let's pretend like you have, since we're having the final on Thursday, you probably have a Tuesday, Thursday combo. So let's say you have your last class of calculus right here. So this is your last calculus class. If you go under this thought process of like, all right, I'm going to prepare for what's coming. I'm only going to study for English, physics, and art, and then I'll give myself Tuesday, Wednesday to prepare for calculus. The forgetting curve says something along the lines of, after a week, you're going to forget a lot of that content from Thursday. You're going to forget even more from Tuesday, even more from the previous week. So you don't want to do that because by the time Wednesday comes around, or Tuesday even, you're going to waste a couple hours just refamiliarizing yourself with the content from just the previous week, or even like, okay, I kind of remember Thursday's content, so I have to review. You're wasting time. It's a big time waste. So what I always tell students is this week before, if you have the time, again, and I know this is easier said than done, but if you have the time, sit down this early part of the week and say, and go through and identify exactly what do you know and what don't you know. Is the final cumulative? Is it over just like the last chunk of class? I know sometimes for when I teach business calc or calculus level classes, I typically make my final like the last chunk of the class, like so like the last couple chapters or however much content we get through in the end. That's how I usually do those higher level classes. But like statistics, I'll do cumulative, so that's over everything in the class. But that's something you want to definitely know, and your teacher should hopefully give you some sort of guide as to what to study. But go through this week before and say like, all right, calculus, I'm really struggling with this concept or that concept. How am I going to tackle that? Because you don't want to just wait till Wednesday or Thursday to prepare for that. It's not going to be good. So the week before, I would go through all of my classes, identify my weaknesses, identify my strengths, and then from there, I would study everything. And typically I have Fridays off of school. So Friday, I would go through all of my classes. I would look at my English content. I would look at my physics content. I would look at my art content, my calculus content, go through all of it and review all of my previous week content, probably this Friday and Saturday. Like I'd spend these 2 days just reviewing stuff from very, very recent, and then start to just keep doing that over the next couple days. So Sunday, I would still look over everything. And going back to what I said about your grades, like, and just understanding the final for English, like you probably don't have to know every single thing for your English final going into it. So don't spend as much time on your English. Like probably focus on your physics and your calculus final during this weekend right here. Like this weekend is your big study weekend. This is where you really sit down and you prep and study everything you need to study. But the week before, this is reviewing everything that you know in that moment. And then the weekend is when you really start to prepare. And as you just get closer, so English, that drops off. And then you could just focus on physics and art, that drops off. And then this Wednesday, if you do this correctly, and another thing that's easier said than done, this Wednesday should just be like an off day. This should just be the day where you are relaxing, you're not really hitting the books too hard, maybe you spend 30 minutes just kind of reviewing some weaknesses more than anything, and just looking over your notes a little bit more. But this is not, I'm going to cram for this calculus exam. Because like I said before, if you use this Wednesday, this open day, I know that's really exciting on your final schedule when you see that. Like, oh, I don't even have a final that Wednesday. That's awesome. A lot of students get into some trouble because you're wasting time looking over previous content. So this is the day where you are relaxing, you're getting a good amount of sleep, and not having to stress over preparing for this calculus exam. And I'm not saying I would probably even look over some things. Like that's not, I could never just like not look it over. But this isn't like a cram day. Same thing with this Monday leading up to physics. Like this weekend here, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like this is when you're preparing for English and physics and art. The day of that Monday, you take the English exam, look over a couple physics things. Maybe you have to tie up a couple loose ends with your art final, and then take the physics, and then you're just kind of studying, relaxing, and not having to worry about Wednesday as much. That's always what I would suggest to students. I've known that this method is definitely a everything goes right kind of method. You have nothing to do that weekend. You don't have work. So this is why you want to prepare ahead of time. Know your work schedule. Know when do you have time to study. When are you going to have enough time on your own where people aren't in your house or you're not having any sort of like school commitments or anything like that. So just know your schedule. Know exactly what needs to be done. And I hope this is helpful. Please leave a comment if you have some suggestions. This is just what I've seen students be successful with in the past, of just preparing a week out and then just slowly tapering off as each final starts to knock off. So I hope this is helpful, and good luck with your finals, and just stay positive and just keep working hard.